Bruno Manser, the 25th of August 1954, the 10th of March 2005, was a Swiss environmental activist. From 1984 to 1990, he stayed with the Penan tribe in Sarawak, Malaysia, organizing several blockades against timber companies. After he emerged from the forest in 1990, he engaged in public activism for rainforest preservation and the human rights of indigenous peoples, especially the Penan, which brought him into conflict with the Malaysian government. He also founded the Swiss non-governmental organization (NGO) Bruno Manser Funds in 1991. He disappeared during his last journey to Sarawak in May 2000 and is presumed dead. Early life and education. Bruno Manser was born in Basel, Switzerland on the 25th of August 1954 in a family of 3 girls and 2 boys. During his younger days, Manser was an independent thinker. His parents wanted him to become a doctor, and he studied medicine informally. He later completed his upper secondary school, the first in his family to do so. Manser spent 3 months in Lucerne prison when he was 19 years old because, as an ardent follower of non-violent ideologies espoused by Mahatma Gandhi Satyagraha, he refused to participate in Switzerland's compulsory military service. After leaving prison in 1973, he worked as a sheep and cow herder at various Swiss alpine pastures for 12 years. During this time, Manser became interested in handicrafts, therapeutics, and speleology. He laid bricks, carved leather, kept bees, and wove, dyed, and cut his own clothes and shoes. He also regularly pursued mountaineering and technical climbing. At the age of 30, Manser went to Borneo, looking to live a simpler life. Searching for Penans in 1983, Manser went to the Malaysian state of Terengganu and stayed with a family. In 1984, while learning more about the rainforests, Manser learned of a nomadic tribe known as the Penan. After learning more about the tribe, he decided to attempt to live amongst them for a few years and traveled to the East Malaysian state of Sarawak in 1984 on a tourist visa. In Malaysia, Manser first joined an English caving expedition to explore Gunung Mulu National Park. After the expedition, he stepped deeper into the interior jungles of Sarawak, intending to find the deep essence of humanity and the people who are still living close to their nature. However, he quickly became lost and ran out of food while exploring the jungle, then fell ill after eating a poisonous palm heart. After these setbacks, Manser finally found Penan nomadic tribes near the headwaters of the Limang River at Long Seradan in May 1984. Initially, the Penan people tried to ignore him. After a while, the Penan accepted him as one of their family members. In August 1984, Manser went to Kota Kinabalu, Sabah to obtain a visa to visit Indonesia. On the Indonesian visa, he entered Kalimantan, then illegally crossed the border back into Long Seradan. His Malaysian visa expired on the 31st of December 1984. Life with the Penans. Manser learned about survival skills in the jungle and familiarized himself with the Penuans' culture and language. The Penan tribal leader in Upper Limang, named Longsaga, became Manser's mentor. During his stay with the Penan, Manser adopted their way of life. He dressed in a loincloth, hunted with a blowgun, and ate primates, snakes, and sago. Manser's decision to live as a member of the Penan was ridiculed in the West, and he was dismissed as a white Tarzan. Within the Penan, however, Manser was known as Lucky Penan, Penan Man, having earned the respect of the tribe that adopted him. Manser created notebooks that were richly illustrated with drawings, notes, and 10,000 photographs during his 6-year stay from 1984 to 1990 with the Penan people. Some of his sketches include cicada wing patterns, how to carry a gibbon with a stick, and how to drill holes on a blowpipe. These notebooks were later published by Christoph Marian Verlag Press in Basel. Manser also created audio recordings of oral histories told by Penan elders and translated them. He claimed that the Penan people were never argumentative or violent during his time with them. In 1988, Manser tried to reach the summit of Bukit Batu Lawi but was unsuccessful, finding himself hanging on a rope without anything to grab on for 24 hours. In 1989, he was bitten by a red-tailed pit viper but was able to treat the snake bite himself. He also got a malaria infection while living in the jungles. Unfortunately, deforestation of Sarawak's primeval forest started during Manser's stay with the Penan. As a result, the Penan suffered from reduced vegetation, contaminated drinking water, fewer animals available for hunting, and the desecration of their heritage sites. Manser worked with Along Saga to teach the Penan how to organize road blockades against advancing loggers. Manser organized his first blockade in September 1985. Activism. Manser gave many lectures in Switzerland and abroad, making connections to people within the European Union (EU) and the United Nations (UN). As an activist, he visited American and African jungles, staying in various locations for a few weeks. He returned almost every year after leaving the Penan to follow up with the logging activities and to provide assistance to the tribe, often entering these areas illegally, crossing the border with Brunei and Kalimantan, Indonesia. He discovered that logging conglomerates such as Rambunan Hijau, Samling, and the WTK Group continued their operations in Sarawak rainforests. As a result, Manser organized the Voices for the Borneo Rainforest World Tour after he left the Sarawak forest in 1990. Manser, Kelabit activist Anderson Mutangarud, and two Penan tribe members traveled from Australia to North America, Europe, and Japan. On the 17th of July 1991, during the 17th G7 summit, Manser climbed unaided to the top of a 30-foot-high lamp post outside of the summit's media center in London. After reaching the top, he unrolled a banner that displayed a message about the plight of Sarawak rainforests. He chained himself to the lamppost for 2.5 hours. His protest also coincided with protests by Earth First and the London Rainforest Action Group. Police used a hoist to reach the top of the lamppost and cut his chains. Manser climbed down the lamppost without force at 1:40 p.m. He was then taken to the Bow Street police station and held until the summit ended at 6:30 p.m., when he was released without being charged with an offense. Later in 1991, Manser set up Bruno Manser Funds, BMF, a fund designed to help conserve the rainforests and the indigenous population in Sarawak. He ran the fund from his home at Huborg 25, Basel, Switzerland. In June 1992, Manser parachuted into a crowded stadium during the Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. In December 1992, he led a 20-day hunger strike in front of the Marubeni Corporation headquarters in Tokyo. In 1993, he went on a 60-day hunger strike at the Federal Palace of Switzerland, Bundeshaus, to press the Swiss Federal Assembly on enforcing a ban on tropical timber imports and mandatory declarations of timber products. The hunger strike was supported by 37 organizations and political parties. Manser only stopped the hunger strike after his mother requested that he do so. After Manser's disappearance, the Federal Assembly finally adopted the Declaration of Timber Products on the 1st of October 2010, with a transition period allowed until the end, 2011. In 1995, Manser went to Congo rainforests to document the effects of wars and logging on Mabuti people. In 1996, on the German-language program Funk vors Wolf, at the 11th hour, Manser and his friend Jacques Christinet used auxiliary cable to drop themselves down 800 meters onto the Klein Matterhorn aerial cable car and hung sizable banners there. They reached the dangerous speed of 140 kilometers per hour while riding on a self-made rider with steel wheels and ball bearings. In 1997, Manser and Christinet tried to enter peninsular Malaysia from Singapore to fly a motorized hang glider during the 1998 Commonwealth Games in Kuala Lumpur. However, he was recognized at the border and denied entry into Malaysia. They then decided to swim across the Straits of Johor into Malaysia, but later abandoned the plan as it involved a lengthy 25-kilometer swim and a passage through a swamp across the straits. They planned an alternative route, opting to row a boat from an Indonesian island into Sarawak. However, BMF received a warning from Malaysian embassy warning of the consequences for such an act. In 1998, Manser and Christy Net traveled to Brunei and swam across the 300-meter-wide Lim Ang River at night. Christy Net was almost fatally injured by drifting logs along the river. They spent 3 weeks in Sarawak hiding from the police. During that period, they attempted to order 4 tons of 25-centimeter nails for the pennon to hammer into the tree trunks, which could have caused serious injuries to loggers when the embedded nails inevitably came into contact with chainsaws. Impact. In 1986, Manser's representative in Switzerland, Roger Groff, wrote about 60 letters to Western media outlets, but none took notice of them. It was only in March 1986 that Ralph Bochmeyer, an editor for the GEO magazine based in Hamburg, Germany, who also specialized in indigenous people, wrote a letter of reply to Groff. In October 1986, GEO published a 24-page article entitled, "You Have the World, Leave Us the Wood," which included photos taken during their undercover tours with Manser, as well as Manser's drawings. The article was later reprinted all over the world in Australia, Japan, and Canada, leading to the attention of human rights and environmental organizations and green parliamentarians around the world. After hearing of Manser's actions, then Congressman Al Gore condemned logging activities in Sarawak. Prince Charles also described the treatment for the pennon as genocide. The BBC and the National Geographic Channel produced documentaries about the pennon, and pennon stories were also featured on ABC's Primetime Live. Universal Studios started to develop an action-adventure horror script where the pennon used their forest wisdom to save the world from catastrophe. The pennon also received coverage in Newsweek, Time, and The New Yorker. Warner Brothers screenwriter David Franzoni also developed a script named My Friend Bruno after they signed a contract with Manser in January 1992. Manser received $20,000 a year until 1998 for the rights to film his life. However, due to its unsatisfying ending, the script was not taken up by the studio. Response from Malaysian authorities. Manser's actions drew anger from Malaysian authorities, who declared him persona non grata, an unwelcome person in the country. A reported bounty for his capture ranging from $30,000 to $50,000 has been circulated by word of mouth, but the source of the bounty is unknown. By 1990, Malaysia declared Manser as the #1 enemy of the state and sent special units to search for him. Using a forged passport and styling his hair differently, Manser returned to Switzerland in 1990 to inform the public about the situation in Sarawak through the Swiss media. Response by Malaysian federal government. Malaysian Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad blamed Manser for disrupting law and order. Mahathir wrote a letter to Manser, telling him that it was about time that you stop your arrogance and your intolerable European superiority. You are no better than the pennon. In March 1992, Mahathir wrote another letter to Manser. As a Swiss living in the laps of luxury with the world's highest standard of living, it is the height of arrogance for you to advocate that the pennons live on maggots and monkeys in their miserable huts, subjected to all kinds of diseases. Response by Sarawak state government. The Sarawak government defended its logging policy by stating that revenue from timber sales is needed to feed more than 250,000 of the state population. Sarawak Chief Minister Abdul Taib Mahmud said, "It is hoped that outsiders will not interfere in our internal affairs, especially people like Bruno Manser. The Sarawak government has nothing to hide. Ours is an open liberal society." Sarawak Minister of Housing and Public Health James Wong said that, "We don't want them the pennon running around in jungles like animals. No one has the ethical right to deprive the Penans of the right to assimilation into Malaysian society. The Sarawak government tightened the entry of foreign environmentalists, journalists, and film crews into the state, and allowed logging companies to hire criminal gangs to subdue the indigenous people. Arrest attempts. Manser was first arrested on the 10th of April 1986 after being spotted by Police Inspector Lors Matios. He was delivering a document for Kilbit chiefs at Long Napier to sign to confirm their wish of further protecting their territories. At the same time, Matios was also on holiday at Long Napier. He immediately arrested Manser for breaking the migration law and brought him to Lim Ang police station for interrogation. Manser was not handcuffed, as the inspector did not carry them while on holiday. During the 90-minute ride to Lim Ang, the Land Rover that carried Manser came close to running out of petrol. While the vehicle stopped to refuel after crossing a bridge, Manser was urinating at the side of the road. While Matios was steps away giving orders to subordinates, Manser took the opportunity to run away, dive into dense undergrowth, and run across the Lim Ang River by jumping from stone to stone. Matios shouted at him and used his pistol to fire 2 shots at Manser, but he successfully escaped capture. On the 14th of November 1986, Manser met with James Ritchie, a reporter from the New Straits Times, in an isolated hut in the Lim Ang jungles. Ritchie came by helicopter to interview Manser. After the interview, Ritchie told Manser that, "As a human being, you are right. Yet as a citizen of this country I have to say no to you. Please don't be angry with me if the story doesn't sound too good." After Ritchie's team left, Manser stayed in the hut until the next day. As he went to the mouth of the Meat River to wash himself, he noticed a boat mooring at the river. He heard a friendly voice called him, "Oh, Lucky Zhao," but instead saw 2 soldiers pursuing him. The soldiers were instructed to capture Manser alive without firing any bullets. Manser immediately put down his blowpipe and a rucksack on the river bank, then dove into the river and disappeared under the heavy undergrowth of the forest floor. Manser successfully evaded capture, but he lost 7 months of his drawings and notebooks in the rucksack. Feeling betrayed, Manser wrote a complaint letter against Ritchie to New Straits Times and it was published on the 1st of February 1987. However, Ritchie denied any involvement in Manser arrest. On the 25th of March 1990, Manser was disguised as Alex Bedk to board MH873 flight from Miri to Kuching. In the airport, Manser and his friend met Police Inspector Lors Matios at the boarding area. However, Matios was on his way to take a law exam at Kuching and he didn't notice the disguised Manser on board. Manser arrived Kuching uneventfully and then took a flight on the 26th of March to Kuala Lumpur. On the 27th of March, Swiss ambassador to Kuala Lumpur Charles Steinhauer made a surprise visit to Sarawak Chief Minister in Kuching. Dealing with Abdul Taib Mahmud in mid-1998, Manser offered an end of hostilities with the Sarawak government if Chief Minister Taib Mahmud would be willing to cooperate with him in building a biosphere around the Panyuan's territory. Manser also wanted the government to forgive him for breaking Malaysian immigration laws. The offer was denied. His successive attempts to establish communications with Taib Mahmud failed. Manser planned to deliver a lamb named Gomperli to Taib Mahmud by air as a symbol of reconciliation during the Hari Raya Idul Fitri celebration. However, the Malaysian consulate at Geneva pressured airlines not to transport the lamb to Sarawak. Manser later carried the lamb with him on a plane and parachuted over the United Nations office at Geneva, hoping to bring international attention to Sarawak. In March 1999, Manser successfully passed Kuching immigration by disguising himself in a business suit, carrying a briefcase, and wearing a badly knotted tie. On the 29th of March, he flew a motorized paraglider, carrying a toy lamb knitted by himself while wearing a t-shirt with the image of a sheep, and made a few turns above Taib Mahmud's residence in Kuching. There were 10 Pennant tribe members waiting on the ground to greet Manser. At 11:30 a.m., He landed the glider beside a road just outside Taib Mahmud's residence and was immediately arrested. He was then transported to Kuala Lumpur, briefly imprisoned, then deported back to Switzerland via Malaysia Airlines flight MH2683. Manser was seen playing with his knitted toy lamb by his jailers. By 2000, Manser admitted that his efforts did not bring positive changes to Sarawak. His success rate in Sarawak was less than zero and he was deeply saddened by the result. On the 15th of February 2000, just before his last trip to Sarawak, Manser said that, through his logging license policies, Taib Mahmud is personally responsible for the destruction of nearly all Sarawak rainforests in one generation. Disappearance. On the 15th of February 2000, Manser left to visit his Penang friends via the jungle paths of Kalimantan, Indonesia, accompanied by BMF Secretary John Coonsley and the film crew. After a period of time, Coonsley and the film crew left Manser in the Kalimantan jungles. At the time, Manser was still writing postcards to his friends. Manser continued his journey with another friend who knew the way around the territory. The trip continued for 2 weeks, crossing mountains and rivers on foot and by boat. Manser slept on a hammock while his friend slept on the ground. On the 18th of May, they reached the Sarawak-Kalimantan border, spending their final night there. Manser asked his friend to carry a postcard back to Charlotte, his girlfriend in Switzerland. According to his friend, Manser looked healthy when they parted ways. Manser complained about diarrhea and a broken rib in the postcard. According to Coonsley, Manser crossed the Sarawak-Kalimantan border on the 22nd of May with the help of a local guide. His last known communication was a letter mailed to Charlotte while hiding in Borneo. In the letter, Manser said he was very tired while waiting for the sun to set before continuing his journey along the logging roads. The letter was deposited at the Borneo post office and reached Switzerland with a Malaysian stamp, but without a post office stamp. Manser was last seen carrying a 30-kilogram backpack by his Penang friend, Palu, and Palu's son on the 25th of May 2000. They accompanied Manser until they saw Bukit Batu Lawi. Manser stated his intention to climb the mountain alone and requested Palu to leave him there. Manser has not been seen since. Search expeditions. BMF and the Penang tried to search for Manser without any success. Areas around the Limang River were searched by the Penang expedition teams tracked Manser to his last sleeping place. They followed Manser's machete cuts into the thick forest until the trail reached the swamp at the foot of Bukit Batu Lawi. There was no trace of him in the swamp, going back from the swamp, or trace of anyone else coming into the area. BMF sent a helicopter to circle the limestone pinnacles. However, none of the search teams were willing to scale the last 100 meters of steep limestone that formed the peak of Batu Lawi. It is possible that Manser fell down the side of the mountain, but neither his body nor his belongings have been found. However, 2 local guides who brought Manser across the jungles of Sarawak were found. In desperation, fortune-tellers and Penang necromancers were called. All of them agreed Manser was still alive. On the 18th of November 2000, BMF requested that the Swiss Federal Department of Foreign Affairs (FDFA) search for Manser. Investigations were carried out at the Swiss consulate in Kuala Lumpur and the Swiss honorary consulate in Kuching. Aftermath. In January 2002, hundreds of Penang members organized a Tawai ceremony to celebrate Manser. The Penang refer to Manser as Laki Tawang, man who has become lost, or Laki Ej Mitat, man who has disappeared, rather than his name, because speaking the names of the dead is taboo in Penang culture. On the 18th of November 2001, 18 months after his disappearance, he was awarded the International Society for Human Rights Prize for Switzerland. After search expeditions proved fruitless, a civil court in Basel-Stadt declared Manser to be legally dead on the 10th of March 2005. On the 8th of May 2010, a memorial service was held in Elisabethen Church, Basel to mark the 10th anniversary of his disappearance. Roughly 500 people attended the service. To celebrate Manser's 60th birthday on the 25th of August 2014, a species of goblin spider that was discovered by a Dutch-Swiss research expedition in Pulongtao National Park in the 1990s is now named after Manser. Apostrophisme Bruno Manser. Books Bruno Manser, 1992. Voices from the Rainforest. Testimonies of a Threatened People. ISBN 978-9670-960012. Written by Manser to introduce Western readers to the life of a Penan. Carl Hoffman, 2018. The Last Wild Men of Borneo. A True Story of Death and Treasure. William Morrow. ISBN 978-0062439024. Biography of Bruno Manser. Films Manser made. A film documentary. Sago. A film by Bruno Manser, 1997, a documentation of the culture of the Panian. Several documentary films have been made about him. They are Blowpipes and Bulldozers, 1988, Tongtana, Henri Til Borneo's Indra, 1989, In the Forest, A Journey to the Heart of Borneo, Lucky People Center International, 1998, Tongtana 2, The Lost Paradise, 2001, Bruno Manser, Lucky Penan, 2007, Lucky People Center International, 1998, Bruno Manser, Die Stimme des Regenwalds, 2019, Swiss film by Niklaus Hilber. Paradise War, The Story of Bruno Manser. See also List of people who disappeared. Missing person. References. External links. Bruno Manser Fund, in English.